Our discussion is on leadership, and we are drawing lessons from the Bible to see leadership that was exhibited. Sometimes the way somebody did it is not good, so we learn what to avoid. Sometimes he had a big impact and we copy. Remember, when you talk about a leader, we mean a person of influence. Of course, influence is not enough. He needs to know where he is going in order to influence people to go with him there. So two critical issues is ability to influence and ability to know where we should be going. He must have a vision. And those will come out in many of the places we will discuss. We want to pick a woman, not discuss very much, but a very critical woman. Her name is Lois. And we hope that in the process, we are going to learn many lessons that the Bible must have intended us to learn. There was no way she would be mentioned in the Bible if there was nothing for us to learn. You know, Lois and Eunice, her daughter, are mentioned in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5, as a grandmother and the mother of a bishop called Timothy, who was a leader of the church in Ephesus and one of the mentees of Apostle Paul. You know, this Eunice was a Jewish believer, but who had married a Greek man. At least that's what we learn in the book of Acts, chapter 16, verse 1. So there was a kind of an intermarriage between a Jew, a worshiper of Jehovah, with somebody who was not a worshiper of Jehovah. And you can see clearly, one of the lessons we learn is the difficulty in bringing up the son by allowing that. That's why we tell anybody who can hear that one of the big lessons you want, if you want to be a man of influence that is going to affect the next generation, marry a person of your faith. Then the both of you can actually work together, you know, to bring up the next generation of people that are going to have impact and influence also. And that's one of the things you learn about Eunice, marrying an unbeliever and the implications of that. So if you want to be a good leader, your marriage matters. Who you marry and his faith or her faith matters. The role of Timothy's father, that therefore, is a bit unclear. You know, he could have been these Greeks who don't care about faith. No wonder then, since we are discussing matters of faith, he is not mentioned in any way. And because he contributed zero to the Timothy's spiritual understanding and belief. Of course, it's also possible that this man actually died when Timothy was young, and no wonder he was not mentioned. I always encourage young people to learn this idea of creating alternatives. When you don't have facts, think about the alternative possibilities so that you don't start talking like it's a fact. We don't have the fact as to why this guy is not mentioned. But one thing is certain, he was an unbeliever. Whether he died early or died late, he was an unbeliever. He was a non-Jew, an unbeliever. No wonder his son could not be circumcised, little Timothy. Regardless of which alternative we take, one thing comes out clear. Eunice wanted her son to have her faith. And she was assisted in this job by her mother, Lois, was the subject of our study. And the two of them worked together to ensure that this boy knew the Holy Scriptures and believed in Jehovah. What a general lesson we are learning. That this woman, Eunice, may have been somebody who didn't take her faith as seriously, but there was a woman called Lois, a grandmother, who took her faith very seriously. If that be the truth, then we are learning one thing, that even if you failed with your daughter and son, there's still some modicum of influence you can have with your grandchildren. You can bypass and being with parents to influence the grandchildren. And I think that makes all of us who are older, you are in your 60s, 70s, 80s, not to switch off and think that we have of no influence. If Lois could influence her grandson, you also can influence grandchildren. When you say grandchildren, they don't have to be your own grandchildren. They are young people whom you can be open to. We grew up in a culture that allowed grandparents to have a lot of influence in their children. Many things young children knew. They knew from their grandparents. They visited them. They were freer. Issues of sex and such matters were learned from grandparents, grandmothers, and grandfathers. And we are slowly moving to where children do not seem to be as impacted by their grandparents as they should. I'm not encouraging grandparents to interfere in any way with the parenting, because they are not parents, but they still can have influence with their grandchildren, just like Lois did. So you need to ask yourself at your age, in your 70s, 80s, have you switched off, become so self-centered, so selfish, that you're not thinking about how to influence others with godly values, with leadership that will help them to enjoy their life better and to be of use to society even more? I think if you are that kind of a grandmother, grandfather, please remember Lois and start investing. Your son and your daughter may be adults and they are no longer listening to you. You can talk to their children, your grandchildren. And when you talk about that, it means involvement in the church. These may not be your children, but you can invite them for tea, talk to them, invite them for a drive, talk to them. And if they are older, they can even drive you around as you talk to them. And you will see that you'll have influence. Remember, you're talking about leadership, and you're saying leadership is influence, but influence to some place. So you must have vision, and you must also have influence. And the moment you are able to influence these children, you can direct them in the direction they should be going, even if their parents are also playing a role. And that is something that will be important. You know, according to the New Testament, this Lois, grandmother of Timothy, was somebody of faith. But we also learn, those who study extra-biblical books, they tell us this, from this extra-biblical tradition, that he was born into Jewish faith and only became a Christian at an older age, along with her daughter Eunice. So as a Jew, she took the scriptures of the Old Testament seriously. When she became a Christian, she took the teachings of Paul seriously. And so she taught Timothy not just the issues of Old Testament, she taught Timothy about the interpretation of the Testament by the New Testament. You know, and I think it will be important to understand that you need to, as an older person, you need to keep yourself updated. Don't just tell children what you used to do when you were 10 years, 15 years, and the learnings you got then. What learning should be a matter of life. And even in your older years, you need to continue learning, continue reading, continue talking, continue researching, so that the influence you are having with young people, you don't start giving them things, values that are passed by time, that are not relevant in their generation. How do you know that they're relevant? By you studying to what is happening currently, the challenges you are going through, and then having a kind of amalgamation of the things you had learned when you were younger, and picking only what's relevant to their time in order to actually help them. So on this point, we are saying a good person of influence becomes a person who is learning continuously. You know, if truth be told, lawyers call themselves the learned friends because Parliament is continuing to make laws, and therefore every lawyer must agree to become a permanent student. If you stop learning, then you cannot be a lawyer, because there are new laws being taught all the time, and new cases that are being decided. So you must be willing to read the cases, the results of cases that have been decided, because that's what law is all about. But I think whatever your area of calling, that is a good lesson to learn. That you must be somebody, if you want to be a leader of influence, and you want to influence people correctly, you must accept to become somebody that will be learning on a continuous basis, so that the things you are learning can advise what you tell your mentees. You know, the other thing I asked myself, this grandmother of Timothy, and evidently she is the mother of Eunice, how did she operate? You know, this family lived in a place called Lystra. And of course, you can remember Paul going to Lystra and the kind of troubles that he got there. You know, if you go to the book of Acts, chapter 16. And so this family is a family in Lystra. It was on the occasion of Paul's first missionary journey in Acts 14 that we first of all hear of this place called Lystra. And it sounds like on that first missionary journey, Eunice and Timothy and Lois were converted to Christ. And it was in all likelihood on the same occasion that they started learning. And because they knew the scriptures better than the young boy, they are able to understand the relationship between Jesus Christ and the prophet, promised Messiah. Now, this is raising an issue. It meant that Timothy, in terms of Christianity, may have been just as old as a grandmother. It means Lois may just have been old as a grandmother. So they are kind of, in terms of Christian history, they are contemporaries. What are we learning? That you can also learn from people who are learning with you. Contemporaries can help disciple each other. And I think that's very important. So as a leader, you need to look for people whom you may not know much more than them, and they don't know much more than you. But you can become a positive influence on each other. No wonder their young protege, Timothy, ended up becoming somebody great, somebody who formed the foundation of Christianity and is remembered world over. Are you getting it? There's not just enough to learn from people who know more. You can also learn from people who are your contemporaries, who have learned these things at the same time. Because they're also seeking. You're also seeking. As you share your notes, you become better with one another. Sometimes it's even easier to learn from people that you are contemporary, because sometimes you feel embarrassed about asking questions of people who know enough, who know a lot. You don't want to embarrass yourself, so you're struggling with an issue. Do you have a group of people that are your friends? Not mentees, not mentors, just your colleagues, who you explore issues together. You discuss issues together. If that's what you are, what will happen is that you'll be better equipped in order to be a better leader, if you are people like that. Some people call them accountability groups. People who can confront you if they think there's something going wrong. You are not their boss. They are not your boss. You're just like each other. And I think it's important to learn that if you want to be a good leader, you need to create a Bible study group of Lois, Timothy, and the mother, Eunice, even if you are born again around the same time. So, into your old age, do you have that group of people who can challenge you, who can talk to you? That way they continue sharpening you. Iron sharpens iron. And because they continue sharpening you, you'll be better. For example, you learn things from the people who know. Like, for example, for the older lot like us, you hear there's a new equipment. And the younger people are talking about it. And you know, you can't quite understand what they are talking about. I've discovered, if I talk to somebody who doesn't know as much, my age mate, they are able to explain it in a much simpler way, and I'm able to understand it better. And because they also are not too knowledgeable, they will not laugh at me. I think it's important to understand the lesson you are learning about these three being born again around the same time, and yet continuing to do a great work. I think that will be something that you need to ask yourself as to whether you are doing it. You know, Paul speaks of the unfeigned faith, unfeigned, faith that is real, that was in Timothy. That's when he watched this boy Timothy, he realized he's a genuine Christian. And then he adds that this same unfeigned faith, he had seen it in the grandmother and in the mother, unfeigned faith. This is the only passage where Lois is actually mentioned. But by comparing what 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5 says, but also what 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 15 is saying, here Paul refers to Timothy as having from a child. We are learning, you have known the Holy Scriptures. That means he did not just get to know about the Holy Scriptures from Paul. He had learned it from the small boy. It would appear that Lois was associated with Eunice, both in a reverent faith in God and a careful instruction of the Old Testament, which was given to Timothy. The Muslims call it madrasa, where from the time a child gets to know anything, they are taken through a rigorous lesson of the Quran. We need to understand the same requirement for a child, even before the age 7. Let them thoroughly understand the basic principles of the Bible. Just tells you how critical it is that you have a real, very clear program. Don't have an altar call to somebody who has not understood. Or have a family altar that is discussing deep things with your children. Adults must lower their level to the level of the smallest child, such that in the family prayer meeting, the smallest child is actually having a chance to learn. And he even needs it more than you that have been hearing God's word for a long time. We are learning 3 things. Number 1, that parents, you have to influence your children at a very early age. Before they become argumentative, let them have the background of God's word. Remember, we are talking about you as a leader, that you as a leader will also look at how to influence not just adults, but younger people. I keep saying in a church, the most gifted person should be sent to Sunday school to be the Sunday school pastor. Because the older people can correct themselves, they can do things, but the younger children are like an empty slate. You can write almost anything on. So shouldn't the best gifted communicator be the one that will be taken to Sunday school? And Sunday school should be given prominence. Sometimes you hear the Sunday school pastor wanting to be moved to adult service because he feels like it's a demotion to be made a Sunday school teacher. What I'm saying is, if you do want the community to go places, your community as a leader to go places, don't just concentrate with the older people. Find a method that ensures the Sunday school level children, younger people, are influenced positively. Even if the older people are too late, they are too resistant. If you concentrate on the young people, see what will happen. That's the secret the missionary who came to Africa learned. Every time he landed in a village, he would start a school, a church, and a hospital. Why a school? Because even if the adults, only 3 or 4 families gave their life to the church and to Christ. Once he opened the school and some children learned how to read, they also attracted other children to come. And every child that ended up in school meant that within 1 generation, the whole village knows God's word. That's how Christianity percolated into the community, by simply using that method of the Timothy method of from childhood, you have known the Holy Scriptures. I hope every leader will think, do I really want my community to change? What am I doing? How am I investing on people that are not yet soiled? They are just an empty slate. And I think that will be something that will be important. When Paul certainly taught, or we can also talk about he was mentoring, or even use the word encouraging Timothy in the faith, because he also had his input. He was Paul's mentee. He could notice that the amount of effort Lois had put in this small boy, the grandson, was worth it. He had left a legacy in Timothy. And so he could see the value in it. That's why he is saying in 2 Timothy 1:5, like I said earlier, that Timothy had a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now, I'm sure, is that faith is dwelling in you. Lois and Eunice example of exercising a sincere faith of their own, not a jocular faith, but a sincere faith of their own, then sharing that sincere faith by teaching the scriptures to the young boy Timothy should be an encouragement of every mother and grandmother. Their commitment to raising Timothy to know God's word gave the small boy Timothy the foundation he needed to become the future bishop of Ephesus. Please acknowledge you are the only sin. You're only seen because you stand on shoulders of others, is what we learned from Timothy. Timothy became great because he was standing on the shoulders of his grandmother. Are you willing to become those kind of shoulders where you help young people to go places, and after they have gone places, they may never remember you. They can't even be mentioned. Just talk about Bill Gates, talk about whoever, big people. You have no idea how they got where they are. That's what a leader should do. Have you ever heard somebody say, they get things done who don't care who gets the credit? You see, Paul decided to give credit to the grandmother and mother. But in most places, it's Timothy who gets known. He has moved from Lystra, he is in Ephesus. They do not know about the grandparents. My friend, don't look for credit as a leader. Look at influence towards a vision. And God will know you did your part, even if nobody acknowledges you. Give your shoulders for somebody to stand on top. Then you'll be seen far away. And nobody will see that he's standing on your shoulder. After all, he is so high, you can't be seen. Some people would rather just jump and let the guy drop out. That's not leadership. Leadership is commitment to the community's good and willingness to be used, even if nobody acknowledges you, for the good. And when you do that, your community will go places. You know, admittedly, Timothy was not the only person to benefit from godly influence of his mother, his grandmother, and even his spiritual father, Paul. But the church at Ephesus reaped the benefit of their godly influence. You know, Paul was right to recognize the shoulders on which this great giant of faith, Timothy, who was shy but effective, stood on. Perhaps one day, other mothers and grandmothers of other children will be recognized by their faithful influence as well. But the important thing is investing in children, investing in youth, has a very high return on investment. How would these ladies have known that this boy would become a bishop? When you invest in young people, you have no idea who they will finally become. They have a whole life of influence. That's why every leader should share something that will help to improve the next generation. And I think that will be something that will be important. Investing in youth, investing in children has a high ROI, return on investment. And any leader must look at a way of influencing them. We are not suggesting you don't talk to other people. We are not suggesting that you don't influence other people, but structure your leadership so that the younger people can benefit from it. And I think that will be something that is very important. So, as we go towards finishing, I think it will be important, very, very important, that we draw several lessons out of this. Number one, that women, God can use them. And not just that God can use them. God has used them to influence the world. Who better influences sons and daughters than mothers. They get, because of the man may not get, doesn't breastfeed, they end up having influence, yes, but not as much influence on children like mothers do. And because of that, it's important to see our ladies as leaders. If leadership is defined as influence towards a vision, I think it's important that our ladies have a vision about the future that they are trying to influence their children towards, because they have bigger opportunities than any man would actually ever get. And so it's important to understand that. So we need to involve women in leadership. We need to involve women by training them, exposing them, and recognizing them and their role, so that no woman will say, I'm just a housewife. Okay, does she know the kind of impact she is having on those young people? I think it will be very important that that is understood. I think secondly, and importantly, it will be important to tell women that they can have influence even without necessarily trying to become men. You know, there's a big issue is that whatever a man can do, a woman can do, which I call nonsense, in the sense that it is not, God did not look for your advice when he created a man very different from a woman. And by a woman trying to be a man and living out what a woman is supposed to be doing and the advantages he has, we end up with two men and the place of the woman vacant. Why can't we allow three things? Number one, that a woman will know there are certain gifts she has no man can ever have. So there are some many things a woman can do no man can do. A man can never get pregnant. A man can never breastfeed. There are many things we can go to them. So the first thing is, the man should also know there are things that a man can do no woman can ever do. And I think it's very important to understand there is a difference. Number two, to know there are things. Number three, because number one is women to know their place. Number two is men to take responsibility, not to feel intimidated when women start doing well. The men want to sit home and be fed by their wives. That's what I'm saying is wrong. There are things man can do and it's meant to be done by men. Do not abscond from your responsibility. But thirdly, there are things both can do. Whereas men and women are different, there are things they are the same. For example, intellectually, men and women are equal. Physically, they are not. Emotionally, they are not. But intellectually, they are not. So why shouldn't any woman not become a professor? And the professorship is actually requiring that they use their intellect. It's possible. There are many things men and women can do equally. And in that case, there should not be any discrimination on issues where both of them can actually do. It will be very, very important that they understand both can do. And so the story of Lois is a story that teaches that we require both men and women for the good of our communities. Thank you very much.